Education for Alaskan Natives, Community Outreach and Suggestions for Improvement. The education of Alaskan Native peoples is a difficult subject to properly tackle based on the difficulties in recognizing and utilizing effective methods of educating and teaching Alaskan Native people. It is, at times, a sensitive topic to discuss due to prior historical experiences for Alaskan Native people and non-Alaskan Native people. But it is one that is important to the continued maintenance of Alaskan Native people's educational standards. It is no surprise that modern and non-traditional forms of education and the methods of education employed by Alaskan Native people varies. As well, we have learned about ways to improve upon our own systems of education in an effort to provide the same level of teaching to Alaskan Native people as we do for ourselves. Through these advancements, non-Alaskan Natives have begun to understand what methods of teaching are most effective, and what methods help preserve cultural identity amongst Alaskan Native people. Primarily, we have learned that knowledge and education can be and is most effective when it is passed from one individual of an older generation to one of a younger generation. We have also seen how the inclusion of Alaskan Native subjects and topics within an educational institution can yield increased positive results regarding the education of Alaskan Native students. What helps students learn, the particular causes of higher educational achievements, and what the effects of inclusion have in schools are what will be discussed in this paper. Additionally, proposed adjustments, suggestions for improvement, and discussion of pre-existing standards will be brought up in an attempt to address issues such as the conflicting styles of teaching employed by Alaskan Native communities and the difficulties in properly reaching Alaskan Native students through educational means such as classes, courses, and community outreach. In doing so, it is the aim of this paper and this speech to provide insight on the problems that occur when two different forms of teaching are combined in an attempt to correct some of these issues. Traditional Alaskan Native education. Traditional Alaskan Native styles and methods of education have a deep meaning and importance within the communities who utilize them. As we have learned throughout the course, some of the communities begin education early in a child's life, and begins with developing an understanding of subtle social cues and social norms. For others, it can be knowledge pertaining to subsistence living taught through villages and village elders who have divided what skills and lessons are taught based on gender roles and the age of the students. In a modern context, a form of self-taught education can be seen within the tourism industry that is utilized by tour guides and employees and is used to create a sort of projected image that suits the perceptions of non-Alaskan Native tourists. The prevalent element that binds these teaching styles together is the general theme of educating the taught student in subjects that would be relevant in daily life and would prove important throughout the development in life. As well, these skills can be used both within rural Alaskan locations and urban environments. A notable example is the implementation of basket weaving and subsistence skills in the creation and selling of art, as noted by Molly Lee in 2003. These lessons and forms of education are both effective in teaching Alaskan Natives valuable life skills and values, but also helps to reinforce Alaskan Native culture and cultural identity among Alaskan Natives. While these skills are valuable, the introduction of modern non-Alaskan Native lifestyles in Alaska, particularly the relocation of Alaskan Natives, has damaged the integrity of these lessons by rendering them unusable in urban environments. Specifically, hunting and fishing, as well as the associated specialized knowledge of local hunting grounds and fishing spots, is either lost or unusable due to a lack of areas where this knowledge can be readily applied. Non-Alaskan Native education. When imagining what receiving an education entails, most individuals automatically default to standardized schooling, college, and getting a degree to pursue a career in a specialized field. Some, myself included, imagine homeschooling, which entails similar goals, but with a more accommodating routine that allows for flexibility and the opportunity to experiment with different academic subjects and classes more easily. Between the two, there are a multitude of pros and cons, such as the development of social skills and time management skills learned in public schools, whereas the previously mentioned benefits apply to homeschooling. Observing the two within the context of integrating and including Alaska Native students, especially when considering the traditional educational methods utilized by Alaskan Natives. We see that homeschooling, while still notably different, more closely resembles these traditional methods due to the inherently personal nature of homeschooling and the ability to learn more uniquely personal values and life skills. The reason for mentioning the similarities between homeschooling and traditional non-native educational methods in Alaska is simple. Public schooling, in general, doesn't inherently place the same emphasis on personalized lessons for any given individual. The purpose and overall goal of most public schools is to assist a student in achieving an education that can then be used to pursue either a higher education or career path. Whereas traditional Alaskan Native and homeschooling can determine the individual's knowledge and preparedness for daily life. Academic institutions assist in reaching a more long-term goal, while usually lacking the same ability to communicate these values and skills to Alaskan Native and non-Alaskan Native students. The differences between the traditional Alaskan Native and non-Alaskan Native educational styles is apparent, and could be the reason for an increased number of Alaska students having dropped out of school. This is particularly noticeable when observing that national dropout rates for Alaska Natives, as well as American Indians, were higher than other racial or ethnic groups, as noted by Swisher in 1991. The disproportionate numbers are so great, in fact, that villages in the lower Kuskokwim River Delta in southwestern Alaska experience 100% dropout rates. Non-Alaskan Native educational outreach and proposed solutions for higher dropout rates. To create a quick fix or all-encompassing solution for the disproportionate number of Alaskan Native dropouts, as well as implement classes and provide outreach to Alaskan Native students, would be impossible. Too often, educators and other policymakers at local, state, and federal levels have initiated education reforms for Alaska and Alaskan Native students solely on the basis of short-term localized considerations, or research conclusions drawn from the conditions outside of Alaska, as noted by Barnhart in 2001. As well, the cultural identities and backgrounds of Alaskan Native students can present unique barriers that limit a federally established school. Within that space, there are 20 distinct Alaskan Native languages recognized by Alaskan Native Language Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, stated by Glabinick in 2010. However, I believe that through a few key changes, Alaskan Native students would have a further incentive to attend and learn from non-Alaska Native academic institutions. As you discussed earlier, most lessons taught within traditional Alaskan Native communities can be applied in daily life, and will benefit the student throughout their development and entire life, whereas non-Alaskan Native educational methods incentivize an individual to pursue a specific career that potentially limits their overall knowledge of general subjects and skills. To reconcile the two, a common ground must be established, and a strong base already exists within most public schools. Vocational classes, shop classes, and classes that introduce students to different physical subjects that are all too relevant in daily life provide a unique and potentially key link to Alaskan Native outreach. Not only do these types of classes provide knowledge of subjects that can affect almost everyone, but they can be implemented in a way that allows for a career in a vocational subject to be more easily pursued. Mechanical knowledge, welding, carpentry, and understanding of shop equipment, and more can all be given to not only Alaskan Natives, but non-Alaskan Natives as a valuable skill set that works both within the context of a career and outside of the context of a career. Alaskan Native or otherwise, there we go. Gender roles in traditional Alaskan Native and non-Alaskan Native education. In traditional Alaskan Native education, there are indeed different lessons and skills taught to the individual student depending on the student's age and gender. For men, such skills as hunting, tracking, fishing, and other similar skills are taught to make the provision of food for the family and community easier. For women, dressing animals and various subsistence activities such as collecting clams and shells, scaling fish, and more are learned to work in tandem with the activities of the men. However, these roles have become more complicated over the years, with the introduction of formal education offering men and women a chance to pursue formal education and formal careers. This is conflicted with the traditional lifestyles of the Alaskan Natives, who experienced a female flight phenomenon within their communities, wherein school students, especially female students, make plans and attempt to move away from the rural Alaskan communities and villages, as noted by a study from Hamilton, Lawrence C., Seyfried, and Carroll L. in 1993. In summary, the methods of education for public schooling, homeschooling, and Alaskan Native education are different and provide unique benefits in their own regards, but in the case of public schooling, suffers from an inability to properly reach out to Alaskan Native students, the result of which is a higher dropout rate than any other racial or ethnic group in America. This can be improved, however, through the implementation and emphasis of classes that both gear students toward potential life paths and careers, but also educates them on subjects that will provide useful life skills.